Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Under the Dome Podcast. I'm Anne Marie Bush, KNEA Director of Communications, and with me is the man of the hour, Timothy R. Graham, KNEA Director of Government Relations. I thought this was supposed to be a fairly quiet week, Tim. I think the first half of the week was, but the last few days have been really busy.
Yeah, the legislature likes to procrastinate.
Well, let's dig right in. The state budget was passed by both the House and Senate last night, which was Thursday, March 26th. The Senate passed the budget 2317, and the House followed at 6753. Can you break down for our listeners the largest portions of the budget that will affect education in Kansas?
I will. Before I do that, let's back up just a second. So last night we had a call with about 30 or more of our more active members that like to get a weekly update.
Yep, the legislative
Thursday night update. And so on that call, which was around 6 o'clock last night, I informed everybody that the budget was up in the air. And it really was. What had happened is the Senate was scheduled to debate the budget bill yesterday at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock came around and they got a slow start. And then what happened is as they began to debate that bill, Ethan Corson, the senator from Johnson County, got up and made a motion to send it back to committee. And at that point, the Senate, the Senate leadership, who didn't know whether they had the votes to stop that from happening, abruptly adjourned. So they left, they left the Senate chamber at that point and left all of us kind of in limbo what was going on. And it took us a few hours to figure out what was going on. So at first, they didn't believe they had the 21 votes needed in the Senate to pass the bill. So it was looking like this was going to be delayed to today or possibly even into the veto session, which comes on April 9th. However, probably about 8:30, 9 o'clock last night, they informed everybody that they were going to go ahead and debate that bill. So apparently they got the votes they needed because, as you said, they ended up with 23 votes in favor of it. So my guess is that they only had 19 or 20 going into yesterday, and somehow they were able to pick up that extra 3 votes with some pretty interesting persuasion is my guess, but I don't know for sure.
That's behind the scenes, right?
Yeah, behind the scenes. Woodshedding is what we like to call it, whip counting, a number of things. Arm twisting, kneecapping, whatever it takes, they got the votes. And so they debated the bill. Here's the interesting thing is nobody really expected the House to take the bill up. But since the Senate got it done, and the House was still hanging around, they decided to stay late. So technically, not to correct you, but technically... Oh,
yeah, that's true. It was this morning.
I think if you were to read the actual subject bill index report, the actual passage of it took place on the 27th, which is today. So that it took place somewhere, I think, I don't know, I was asleep by this time, but about 1 o'clock in the morning.
So that would have been the House. The House.
Yeah.
So did the Senate pass it Thursday then?
Yeah, the Senate would have passed it last night, probably around 10 o'clock.
All right.
And by the time it got over to the House and by the time the debate was finished.
You just love to correct me, don't you?
Well, I just thought that would be interesting. But anyway, so you want to know what's in that bill, right?
Yes, I do.
Well, so there's close to 120 million increase on the base state aid per pupil. Thanks to the courts. That's part of the CPIU index increase that was mandated by the courts in the Gannon ruling, basically because the courts agreed with many of us that were on that side that school funding hadn't stayed up with inflation over the years. So we needed a CPIU increase every year to just keep up with the cost of educating kids. So that $120 million is in the bill, and there's an extra $6 million in SPED funding.
That's still not enough, though.
Not enough. No, we needed at least. We could have used up over $50 million to really comply with state law. But just to stay even with where we were last year in terms of percentages, I think we would have needed about $24 million. So we're, a fourth of the way there of staying even equal with the percentage that we funded last year. What I mean by that, the percentage of excess cost. State law says that we should do 92%. And at last year, we were in the somewhere in the 70th percentile. And now we're in the high 60.
So a drop.
So yeah, we're probably 67% funding of the excess cost of SPED. So to even stay even with what we had last year, we would have needed around $24 million, I believe. So
is that against the law?
Well, it doesn't follow our statute, but nobody has challenged it. I mean, you have to take something like that to court.
Right.
The legislature doesn't follow a lot of its own statutes. That's just a fact. Mm-hmm. So it'd be interesting to see if a lawsuit ever took place, what the courts would say. I have my own opinions, but I'm not an attorney, and we could get into them on another day. But also in this bill, there was a proviso language that the House put in early on that would have taken money that was left over from last year, unencumbered funds mm-hmm. that were not spent, that were appropriated in last year's budget, and the proviso would allow a portion of that money to be spent on the teacher mentoring program and professional development programs mm-hmm. that we have often advocated for. Those were programs that were funded outside of the base in previous years. Last year, they were taken out. They weren't the programs didn't necessarily go away, but much like special ed services, any school district that was offering those type of programs that wanted to continue those, they would have had to take it out of their general funding. So that was a problem. We testified on the bill or the budget in general this year, and we asked that those programs be funded outside of the base. So we didn't get new money, but we at least got this proviso in the bill that would have allowed the extra excess money from the last year's budget to be applied to them.
So a small win there.
It's a very small win, but one that's important, mm-hmm. right? The Senate did not do that in their version, so the House stood strong in conference and kept that in the bill. We've talked about the MHIT program. The MHIT program is called the Mental Health Intervention Team mm-hmm. Pilot Program. It was a bipartisan program that I think was passed a couple of years ago, and it took several years to get that passed, and it took a lot of work to get it passed. It was the brainchild of a former representative, Brenda Landwehr, as well as something that was very, very important to the governor, Laura Kelly. And so finally they were able to bring that together, but they couldn't get funding for it. So they put it in as a proviso, and it's never been codified in state law, which means that every year they have to re-up the money that it costs to administer this program. And they have to re-up it with proviso language in the budget bill. So this year, the cost to re-up it was going to be $16 million. That was included in the original Senate bill. But then on the floor of the Senate, and we've talked about this before, during the original debate on the budget bill, Beverly Gossage, a senator from DeSoto, I believe, she put on an amendment that basically would have done away with the program, mm-hmm. and then it would have recaptured that $16 million to spend elsewhere, is what she said. And in her amendment, she did capture $1 million of that $16 million and apply it back to special ed. I guess, thank you, right? A lot of people felt like that was a pretty disingenuous move. In terms
I can understand how they would feel that way.
Yeah, throwing another $1 million at a program that needs to be funded by tens of millions of dollars, and at the same time taking it away from a mental health intervention.
Something that's very important.
It's very, very important. You take that in kind of the context of all the talk that's been swirling around the cell phone bill and mental health, mm-hmm. Which I believe a lot of people that were on the pro side of that cell phone bill really believed in the mental health aspect of cell phones. But there were people that also just used that and then voted to take $16 million out of schools for mental health intervention programs. So that was a controversial move, and it wasn't taken well by several people. The conference committee recognized that on the budget, and they did recapture $10 million for the MHIT program, which is a good amount. So,
but still, so does that still mean $6 million short?
I don't know that it's $6 million short. I don't know that the $16 million was tied to anything specific.
Okay.
I know that several people were happy that the $10 million went back in, but there was some language put onto that $10 million that would have only allowed for 70% of it to go to public schools. The other 30% would go to accredited non-public schools. So, not ideal. But at the same time,
it's better to have something.
It's better to have something, and I would imagine that the kids in the non-accredited or the accredited non-public schools, they need mental health intervention as much as anybody. So at the end of the day, at least there are kids that will be serviced by this program, and the program didn't die. Also included in the final budget bill, which, by the way, the number of the final budget bill is House Bill 2315. If anybody wants to look it up,
it's several pages long.
Several pages long, and they're very hard to follow.
Yeah.
So
I noticed you brought your stack of.
I brought a stack of chicken scratch, but also in that bill is the student walkout language that went on during the Senate debate. Mm-hmm. That's the language that would penalize school districts that allow students to walk out during instruction time. There's been a lot of walkouts lately in public schools. At this time, a lot of those walkouts are to protest ICE. But some of those walkouts are to protest other things.
I think there was one not.
Yeah, there's one right across the street here a couple days ago.
Yeah.
All the kids, from what I read, they were counted absent. So I don't know if the pending passage of this bill encouraged the administration across the street at Topeka High to count those kids absent or not. But certainly in the future, those walkouts are going to be they're going to be problematic for the administration because they'll be fined because of this proviso that was in the Senate. They'll be fined heavy penalties. Yeah. The other thing that's in this bill that is not good is there's a proviso to use the 2024 cut scores for statewide assessments. So for anybody that was wondering what I mean by that, the State Board of Education kind of revamped the student assessment programs in the state of Kansas just this last year. And in doing so, they felt like they were bringing things up to be comparable with other states, and just kind of revamping the whole program, the cut scores, the way they score them, and whatnot. And several legislators took that as them kind of watering down or dumbing down the cut scores to try to soften what they would say are failures in public schools. That's not the case. That's not the intention of this State Board of Education. There are several very, very conservative members of the Kansas Board of Education that would not go for something like that. So just in general, that's a pretty disingenuous argument for legislators to make. The bottom line is KSDE and the people that actually, the bureaucrats that have to do the work, the ones that are not saddled with politics and party politics and identity politics and all that stuff, they would tell you that this is basically the reason they had to change that stuff up is because they changed the test in a pretty substantial way. And when you change the test, you have to also change the way you score.
Right. And that's a big process.
Yeah, it is a big. Yeah, you worked over there.
Yes, and it's a lot of work.
So this is going to be a mess for KSDE to use old cut scores on a test that the cut scores weren't designed to actually track student progress. So, I haven't talked to anybody at KSDE on how they're going to navigate that, but it's definitely a problem. So that's kind of the gist of where that bill is, or where that bill, what was contained in the bill. It's on its way to the governor. The governor can line item things in the bill. There's several things that she probably will line item in that bill. I don't know what they would be at this point, but we will start to hear chattering of that as the weeks progress before everybody comes back for the April 9th veto session. Yeah.
So let's talk about vouchers real quick. I know that we're kind of waiting to see what happens with what the governor's decision is on that.
So if everybody remembers, House Bill 2468 was the...
Who do we appreciate?
Yeah, that's what Adam Thomas, that was that part of Adam Thomas's, he's a senator from the Johnson County area. That was part of his motion to pass it out of committee. He made that little rhyme. So House Bill 2468 is the voucher bill that they were running this year. It's as we've said several times, it's a voucher in the name or in the form of tax credits. And it applies to two different programs. It applies to the state's tax credit program, which is ironically ironically called the Low Income Tax Credit Scholarship Program. It doesn't help low income students on the average with anything. The money goes to or the tax breaks are going to very wealthy businesses that can put money into the program. And so that was part of the bill. They are expanding that program, kind of blowing the cap off of it, if you will, or at least some of the cap. The other part of that program was the opt-in for the federal tax credit program that really is still kind of up in the air. There's a lot of talk about what that's actually going to entail, and I don't know that anybody's got it straight on what it really means. But that was the bill 2468 to opt us into that program, as well as the expansion of the Low Income Tax Scholarship Program that I talked about. That bill passed both the House and the Senate, and it's sitting on the governor's desk, as we've talked about several times. We have asked her for a veto. I had that conversation with her. I was fortunate enough to be able to get in and talk to her, and so we're anxiously waiting to see if she will veto that. As I've said several times as well, is that she will not. She knows what she's going to do on that bill, I guarantee you. But she will not commit to anything until her and her staff have had time to really pore over what they're going to need to do, and so that's just a rule, a hard and steady rule that she's always had. It was that way when I worked there, that you do not promise a veto, and you do not talk about a veto until that time is ready. So, as I said before, we didn't get kicked out of there, or I didn't get kicked out of the room when I asked for the veto. So, I'm hoping that's a positive sign. We're waiting for that. So, in anticipation that that's going to be vetoed, the Republicans in the conference committee, the Education Conference Committee, they loaded up a bill, Senate Bill 361, with the federal opt-in portion of 2468, and they left out the low-income tax scholarship expansion portion of 2468. But that's in a conference committee report, SB 361, that I expect to be debated today.
So what's the reasoning for that? Just because they're anticipating the veto, like you said?
They're anticipating the veto, and I think what they believe is that if they can get just a clean a clean opt-in to the federal program, that they can get enough votes to override a veto of that, where they know that they're not going to be able to get to 84 votes in the House to override her veto if she vetoes 2468. So that's why they took the low-income tax scholarship portion of that bill out and loaded just the federal opt-in. That remains to be seen whether they can get the 84 votes needed in the House. They'll certainly get enough votes in the Senate to override and to pass. But in the House, the question will be, can they get from, I think their high water mark right now on 2468 is 77 votes. So can they pick up another 7 votes by taking the low income tax scholarship portion out? That remains to be seen, but I believe they think they can. That's why they did this.
And you said they're going to take that up today?
I believe so. Okay. Yeah. We're waiting to see.
We never know, though.
You never know. Yeah. I mean, but the intention, unless I tell you what'll happen is if something goes really bad over there, because they've passed the budget in both chambers, if something gets really heated, or if they see some real big nightmare, PR nightmare coming down on the floor of either chamber, they'll adjourn and go home. And that could leave some of these bills in jeopardy, or leave them to be debated in the veto session that starts on April 9th. But it's hard to tell whether something like that would happen. Those of us that have been around the process for a long time, this is the time of year where we kind of sit over there with our eyes wide open, thinking, okay, what's the 11th hour surprise that's coming? Because
you didn't anticipate the budget.
No, I didn't think the budget would be run last night.
And then until 1 a.m. This morning.
Yeah.
So. All right. One other question: where are things at with SB 381?
Okay, so 381 is the bill that would require schools to teach curriculum informing Kansas students on the negative aspects of communism and socialism. That was how the bill was originally drafted. They did put an amendment on that would also include the negative aspects of authoritarianism, which I think is important and very timely, particularly from the people that supported and offered that amendment. That amendment did go on as well. And the other thing that's in that bill is requiring K-12 students to take and pass a civics test that's modeled after the United States citizenship test. Okay,
and they have to do that to graduate.
They'd have to do that to graduate. So, I mean, conceivably, you could be the best student in your class, and you can already have several offers from several colleges, been accepted to several colleges, and if you don't pass this, you can't graduate. Wow. Now, the proponents of this will say, well, you have several years, and you can take it as many times as you want. So I get that, but still.
So it's nothing. It's not just something they give you your senior year and you have to pass.
I mean, the original bill was that you could start taking I believe the original bill said you could start taking it in 7th grade. Okay.
So once you pass it, you don't have to take it again.
You don't have to take it again. But that bill right now is still in conference. So the Education Conference Committee met again this morning. And I'll tell you what they've kicked out so far here in a second. But what they were talking about this morning is basically the contents of 381, which they've dropped into House Bill 2412. That'll be the final number, I believe, of this bill. And that's what the conference committee will be named should it pass out. But what they're kind of debating right now is what the test actually looks like. So there's been several different iterations of what that testing would look like. Would it be 100-question test that would be, written answers, not multiple choice? I mean, there's some people that are over there that, are so hardcore on this that they can't see past their nose. They believe that these kids should be taking 100-question test that are all written-only answers, that would be modeled after what the citizenship test would be. But the citizenship test only requires 20 questions. Now, they are written only, but to be considered a passing grade, if you will, on the federal citizenship test, you have to get 12 of them correct. So that's like 60%, where this got to the point where there was one fairly good amendment. If this is going to happen, this amendment made it a lot better, where they would have made it a 20-question test, multiple choice, but they upped it to you have to get 80% to be considered a passage. So that was taking away the 100-question test, which I think is complete overkill and unrealistic. That went on the House bill, but it's that provision right now that the House and Senate conferees are kind of negotiating over, because the House conferees, they don't believe that there needs to be a 100-question test. I think they're okay with going back to written because the House, the amendment they adopted would have made those questions multiple choice as well, those 20 questions multiple choice. They're okay to going back to written, but they do not want to go back to 100 questions. And so that's kind of where they're stuck right now. And what the conversation in the committee is that model it completely after the citizenship test. If you're going to say this is modeled after it, then do it exactly like that. And what that means would be a 20 question test, written only, that you have to get 12 of those questions correct. And that's, at the end of the day, I think that's the best we could get. I mean, it would be nice if they'd make those multiple choice questions if they're going to make the kids take these. But this is better than a 100 question test.
I'd like to see if I could pass it.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely these people that walk around and think that they're 1,000% patriot and 1,000% American. A lot of them would have a hard time passing a lot of this because they're not that informed.
Maybe you and I should challenge each other at some point.
No, I wasn't referring to you. Let's challenge some legislators over there.
Maybe that's a podcast in the future.
It could be. We could just proctor some tests right here live.
Yes.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
So anyways, that's in conference. They will meet again probably this afternoon and probably iron that out. We'll probably see that bill kicked out. 2412, I think, is what the final number will be. Right. So, kind of wrapping up the podcast here, the conference committee, the education conference committee, they have signed 6 conference committee reports. So the 2 that we just discussed, one, like I said, has not been signed yet. That would be 2412. But the other one that has been signed is Senate Bill 361, the voucher one we just talked about. There's another one that is, it'll be HB 2402 Conference Committee report that has the CEP free and reduced lunch.
Which we've talked about.
Yeah, we've talked about. Yeah, it's the bill that would require districts to consider participating in the CEP. We felt like the process may have put us in jeopardy with federal guidelines and laws. We also felt like it would discourage certain families from actually signing up. Either because they didn't want to be outed or because they just would have been confused on everything. And so we felt like it could lead to less at-risk funding. And we sent out an alert on that. Our alert was not taken seriously because the Senate passed it with 38 votes. So there are several people, including several of our allies in the legislature, that just didn't feel like that our concerns on that bill were valid. So that is going to run today. The other ones, there's a let's see, 1, 2, 3. So the 4 that I didn't talk about, they contain a lot of pretty benign stuff that we either were neutral on, some stuff that we actually supported, or mainly stuff that we didn't even testify on. So the only 2 real problematic conference committee reports at the moment that have been signed would be 2402 and 361. Those are the ones we'll keep our eye on. They'll be debated today. And then, of course, like I said earlier, if they have resolution on the 381 communist socialism bill, that would be kicked out and probably debated today as well, or maybe even left for the veto session.
Anything else?
Well, I mean, there's some wild stuff that's circulating around the tax committee. Yeah. I mean, and it changes about every 15 minutes. There's some very heavy dramatics. And
a lot of that stuff can affect our members and education.
It can. I mean, particularly when you're talking about property taxes and a lot of the schemes that we've seen that we've had to defend or fight against, if you will, that would reduce and whittle away at the property tax base, which directly affects school funding. So we always have to watch what's going on in the tax committee, but it's it's so wild right now. And it's really, I tell you what, the tax conference committee is getting on everybody's last nerve over there in the State House. Even several of the legislators and even, I believe, some of the people that are on that conference committee. Wow. They're just tired of it. They're meeting. They met last night after both chambers adjourned. So, or at least they were scheduled to. And I think one side went in and the other side may not have even showed up. I don't remember exactly what happened because I wasn't there. But yeah, a lot of drama, a lot of personal infighting. A lot of.
Do we need to set up a boxing ring?
Well, I don't know. I think we ought to stay out of that one. But no, we'll keep our eye on that stuff and hope that nothing comes out of either one of those committees with enough votes to either support another resolution on the August or November ballot, or something that comes out with enough votes to override a veto.
So we're in first adjournment at the end of today?
Today is scheduled to be the first adjournment and the last day, the final day of the regular session.
So what does that mean? Are they off next week? Or
they'll be off. Yeah, they'll leave whenever they gavel out. They'll pass a joint resolution of both chambers to adjourn until date certain, which will be April 9th. When they'll come back and
for the veto
session. The veto session. Some of us call it the wrap-up session. Traditionally, the veto session was reserved for the legislature to respond to the governor's vetoes. Mm-hmm. Get everything passed, and then let the governor have 10 days or however many days it takes to be engrossed, enrolled, and then deliberated and down on the second floor in the governor's office to make those decisions, decide whether they sign it or veto it. And then the legislature can come back and try to override any vetoes should they wish. The veto session in the last decade has really been kind of rats and cats do everything at the last minute session. That's why it started to be called the wrap-up session, because a lot of the stuff, including the budget, was being kicked off and procrastinated until the veto session. And there's sometimes good reason for that, but that's what the veto session originally was.
Is there a limit on how long that can go?
No.
So do they ever have to take a break from that, or is that usually what extends?
Well, so to the credit of the leadership now, they haven't lost control of that part of their leadership. They've been able to keep things on track and get out of here without a long extended session. But that's
what I was going to ask you. What's the longest since you've been over there that you can remember?
Oh boy. I mean, I remember being there almost up until July one year.
Wow.
You're
hoping that doesn't happen this year.
No, heck no. That won't happen this year. But I don't anticipate a long drawn out veto session. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but last night when we didn't
anticipate that.
No, but and when we didn't know whether they were going to have the votes for the budget. Then you could have said, well, maybe they're gonna delay everything until the veto session, and then that veto session is a lot more likely to have drug on as people dug in their heels. But after they passed the budgets last night, with the way they did, there won't be a long extended veto session. I just
remember when I was working at the Capitol Journal and I was on the copy desk, or even just as a reporter, there were many nights that we would wait till the last minute to try to get things wrapped up because they were going late.
Yeah, we used to go late a lot.
Yes, and
I think the longest day I put in over there was when I worked for the governor, 36 hours without leaving the State House, and that was right before we had to shut everything down for COVID. So we had to do a lot of stuff and get the place adjourned so everybody could go home. But that was the longest, but several over the years, 14, 16-hour days. The legislature used to work well into the early mornings of the next day, and almost as if it was almost as if they felt like they weren't getting anything done unless they had several of those nights. Well, let's do this so we can tell the people of Kansas how hard we're working. And really, I don't think anybody in Kansas felt sorry for them. But what happened is we used to have several of those really long nights, really early mornings. And there's several older people in the legislature that, and I'm starting to understand this now, that can't handle 15 hours straight,
right?
And the blood sugar impact and all the things. And so, it was after one of the long, really late nights and long sessions that a representative named Bob Bethel, a Republican from central Kansas, I think he was from just west of Reno County, west of Hutchinson, just a class act, wonderful guy. He died driving home Sunday afternoon after a really, really late Saturday and early Sunday morning session. And a lot of people felt like he had a medical situation behind the wheel of his car, and he crashed his car because of that. And they think it was in some part due to
all the stress,
and the late nights and the not being able to eat regularly and stuff in that last, marathon session. So the legislature has adopted what they call the midnight rule, to where most times they go home by midnight. They have suspended that rule a few times to get things done, and they probably would have had to have done that last night. They would have had to make that motion, but for the most part, they don't have the long 15-hour days anymore, and that's a good thing because nothing good happens.
Yeah. Now you sound
2
like
in the morning.
I've heard policemen say that too.
Well, that's what I tell my son. Nothing good happens after 10 o'clock. Get home.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, thank you for the update. I appreciate it. Anything else that I think we've covered a lot? No, we'll do a little wrap up article, but it'll be probably pretty much what you heard here. I'm hoping maybe after all the official conference committee reports get published, in which there's only 3 of them that I have sitting here now, we can do a little bit deeper dive on everything that came out of education conference, but that'll be next week. Okay. So, and that'll be a written report. So. All right. Well, thank you so much for everything. Thank you. And we'll hopefully talk to people next week. All right. All right. Thank you. And I guess we will hopefully see you next week, if not the following week, for when veto starts. So, yeah.